Hello, Matt Osborne here again. So in this video I'm going to compare a Leica M2 versus a Leica M3. Both of these are Leica M film cameras made in the 1950s. They look very much the same, if I can show you like that, but there are differences. So one camera may suit you more than another if you're looking to buy an M film camera. These are the older Leica M film cameras. There are newer ones which I'll review in following videos, like M4P, Leica M6. But if you can't wait, just go to the mrleica.com blog, I'll link it below, and there's a link to all the different Leica M film cameras comparing the features of each one. So if you've got a checklist as to which M camera may suit you best, head over to the blog and just go through the list. And you'll be able to work out, if you put like a tick next to each one as to which one suits you best, you'll be able to work out by the end of reading the review which camera is the camera for you. But in this video particularly, I'm just going to talk about the M3 versus the M2. It's worth noting there's probably multiple types of each Leica M camera, but in particular for the Leica M3 there is. They look identical, but one is a Leica M3 single stroke and one is a Leica M3 double stroke. When you're buying a Leica M camera, you may want to bear this in mind as to which camera will suit you best. The Leica M3 single stroke is the same as how the M2 will work and the M4P I use and the M6, meaning a single stroke, you cock the shutter once, take your picture, cock once, take the picture. This is single stroke. With a double stroke like M3, you cock, then the second time, take your picture. Once, twice, take your picture. Personally, I prefer the Leica M3 single stroke because when using lots of different film cameras, I forget that one of them has to be cocked twice, and so I miss pictures. Usually this is for models, but I wouldn't like to kind of be in that situation during a wedding, so I wouldn't put myself in that position, so I wouldn't use the double stroke for a wedding personally, because I just need to be on autopilot where I cock the shutter, take the picture. If the bride's about to do something, you cock the shutter and nothing happens, you're like, ooh. And you wouldn't do many weddings. Okay, so that's a difference between possible versions of the Leica M3 camera you might find when looking to buy a used camera. So now back to the comparison, Leica M2 versus Leica M3. It's worth noting the M2 is also single stroke. I've made a little checklist which I'll, or summary I guess you would say, which I'll embed into this video at the end. I'll go through each point in turn in this video just to kind of help give you some visuals. The Leica M3, despite the name, was released before the Leica M2. So the Leica M3 is the first Leica M film camera released in around 1954, where the Leica M2 was released around 3 years later, I believe in 1957, 1958. Why does that matter? Some people say that the Leica M3 is like the best Leica M film camera ever made. This is because in all later models, they realized that because the M3 was so kind of over-engineered, they was trying to cut costs in all later models and in most respects, and so the cameras got lighter and they were using cheaper internal parts in most models. If you check the blog, it will detail the materials used in each camera. So that's why some people say the M3 is the best in terms of build quality, because it's built like a tank, they say, but when you hold these cameras they feel identical. In terms of weight, the M3 is 580 grams and this is 560. So again, they feel the same, but the M3 is slightly heavier. When you look at the controls on the top of the camera, all the controls on the Leica M camera, well, most of the controls, there's a couple on the front, they're on the top. You've got both cameras, both the M2 and the M3 have a maximum flash sync speed of 1/50, which is signified by the red arrow, and both have a maximum shutter speed of 1/1000. Now this is quite slow compared to a modern camera. So if you buy this camera coming from Sony or a modern Leica, something like this, you may need to use ND filters if you're shooting in bright conditions with, say, a Summilux f1.4 lens, because you won't be able to use a high enough shutter speed to get your exposure correctly, meaning you'll have to shut the lens down to make it less bright. And if you don't want to do that, you'll need to use an ND filter. So bear that in mind. On the all Leica M film cameras have the same. So even on an M6, which is a later model, 1980s, it's still 1/50 and 1/1000th. So it doesn't improve with later Leicas. So they're both the same in that regard. The shutter counter on the M3 is slightly more refined in that it's built into the camera, whereas on the Leica M2, it's a bit more of a cheaper setup with like a disc under the film advance, which counts your film. So each time it's just mechanical. So every time you cock the shutter, it will click around one. It's a fairly simple design. With the Leica M3, it's got a built-in kind of counter, so it looks a lot nicer if you like that kind of thing. Both the Leica M3 and the Leica M2 have the film rewind kind of knurled metal knobs. I'll show you how to rewind film. So when you come to your last frame, it will stick, which basically means it won't go any further because it's pulling taut on the cassette. Once you feel it pull taut to the left, the top lever here, you lift and then you turn clockwise. You turn clockwise until again it comes really tight, and when it pulls tight, that means it's pulling the film out of the film spool, which I'll show in a minute, and that means it's almost ready to open the bottom and take your film out. But the reason I'm telling you this is because the older Leica M2 and Leica M3 have the knob design, and then the later M4P and M6 and other cameras, many of them have the rewind crank, which is a faster design. So again, if you're during a wedding or something, it's not the fastest way to rewind. Try like a crazy person to try and rewind your film. If you compare that to, say, a modern, well, a very advanced, say, Nikon F5 autofocus SLR camera, that's auto rewind. It's just and it's done, and there's me still going like this, like a crazy man. So if you're shooting in a fast-paced kind of scenario and you need to change film quickly and you've only got one film body, I would get the later model and use which utilize this rewind crank, which is quicker. I'll show these in a later video. So if you're a 50mm guy, you'll prefer the Leica M3. If you're a 35mm guy, you'll prefer the Leica M2. Why is it so clear-cut? Leica M film cameras have built-in framelines, which means they're optimized to use with particular focal lengths. The M3 is designed to optimize with the 50mm, 90mm and 135mm lenses. That means if you attach a 50, 90 or 135mm lens to an M3, a frameline will appear in the viewfinder so you can compose your image. If you attach, say, a 28mm lens to an M3, you'll still see the 50mm frameline, and then you'll be able to focus, but you won't be able to compose because it's only going to show you the middle of the picture. So if, for example, I use an M3 with a 21mm lens, I'll attach the lens as normal, and then I use a 21mm external viewfinder which clips onto the top of the camera, and then I focus with the in-camera viewfinder, compose with the external viewfinder, and then you can take your picture. So the M3 and the M2 can be used with any lens, but if it's wider than the frame lines in the camera, then you'll need to use an external viewfinder to compose your image. So to recap, M3, 50mm, 90mm, 135mm frame lines, not 35mm. So if you put a 35mm lens on, you won't be able to see your full image through the camera. M2 has got 35mm, 50mm and 90mm. So if you're a rare person that only shoots with 135mm lenses, I think that's probably not nobody on a Leica. But if you happen to be that person, there's no 135mm frame lines on an M2. Most other Leicas have frame lines for 135mm lenses. These give some people a totally kind of expression, but quite a kind of pure photography experience in terms of if you put a 50mm lens on an M3, the whole frame is showing you a 50mm composition. And it's not cluttered with like lots of other things flashing and needles and blah, blah, blah. Like on a modern camera, there's stuff everywhere. You literally just see a picture and your frame line, which is what you want and it's what you need. So if you use a 50 on an M3, you get kind of that view. And equally, if you use a 35mm lens on an M2, you get the same. Just a simple, clear 35mm box for your 35mm lens. Why do I have both? If I'm shooting 50mm, I use an M3. If I use 35mm, I use an M2. There is another difference between the viewfinders. The M3 viewfinder has a 0.91 magnification, meaning when you look through it, it's not 1:1, which is like real life, it's slightly less, but it's almost 1:1. All later Leicas after the M3 were designed to have a 0.72 magnification. There are a couple of variants, but in most cases they're all designed with 0.72. If you like 50mm lenses, and if you shoot fast 50mm lenses such as a 50 f1 Noctilux or 51.4 Summilux, I'll try and link that at the end of this video, the 50mm lens comparison post. If you shoot fast 50s and you need critical focusing capabilities, a 0.91 magnified viewfinder makes it much easier to be able to capture sharp images. Personally, I much prefer the M3 for that reason alone, that I can focus nice and clearly to get a sharp image. With an M2, you can still get a sharp image, but it's because the image in the viewfinder is less magnified, it's not quite so easy to see the eyelashes of the model that you're photographing in my example, because I usually photograph people. Okay, so that's the viewfinders. Now the top of these cameras look very similar to the top of slightly more modern Leicas, in terms of it looks like they have a hot shoe on the top of the camera. Hot shoe meaning you can attach your speed light or your trigger and you can fire your off-camera flash. Now it's worth noting, because the Leica M2 and Leica M3 are older cameras, these look like hot shoes, but they're actually called cold shoes. What cold shoe means is they are not kind of powered. So when you take your picture, it's not going to send a signal through the camera to the hot shoe or to the plate on the top to send a signal to fire the flash when you press the shutter. So is there any use of having a cold shoe? You can use them to attach external viewfinders, and there are ports on the back of the cameras to use flash, but it's not you can't just like plug and play, as they say these days. You can't just clip on a modern speed light and fire off flashes. You need to use the specific cables, which you might be able to find on eBay, but it's not so easy. I have done it, but not for a long time. So these cameras, the M3 and the M2, are not optimized to use for flash photography. As a flash photographer, one reason I bought the M4P and M6 at a later date, because living in the UK, we don't have much daylight a lot of the time, or they all say it's raining and it's grey, and it's definitely sunnier in other countries. So these are brilliant for shooting in available light if you're living somewhere with bright conditions. If you need to use flash, or if you love using flash photography, I would probably recommend you look at either the M4P or the M6 or a later Leica, and not these cameras, because of the restrictions from them having cold shoes. Does the Leica M3 and Leica M2 have a built-in light meter in camera? No, there's no light meter in either of these cameras. One good thing about no light meter is no batteries. So these cameras are fully manual and they require no batteries to operate. So you're never going to get caught out in the field and the battery die on you, which I quite like. I like the simplicity of full manual cameras, even if I use more modern film cameras as well. So no batteries in either camera, no light meter in either camera. Both cameras are made mostly of brass, meaning they are slightly heavier. Again, 580 grams, 560 grams of the M2. Probably more brass, but like could just be kind of old wives' tales from the internet, but that's what they say, better built, so it's slightly heavier. Now the film loading of a Leica M3 and a Leica M2 is the same in both cameras, but these cameras are different to a Leica M6 and an M4P and some of the later models. If you've already got a Leica M6 and you then buy like M2 or like M3, you can have a surprise because the film loading mechanism is different. Some people say that this is a slower way to load film, and that's why the later models were redesigned to be able to load film more quickly. I'll set the camera up in a different position and I'll show you how to load film in either a Leica M2 or Leica M3. It's the same in both cameras, so once you know how to load one, it's the same for both. If you shoot 50mm lenses, buy an M3. If you shoot 35mm lenses, buy an M2. If you shoot with flash, don't buy either. If you shoot and heavily rely on a light meter, don't buy either camera. Or buy a handheld light meter. Like I use a Sekonic handheld. Or I use a digital camera and then hybrid shoot, use both cameras and then dial in the numbers into the camera. So another reason why you may want to decide which camera to buy. Price-wise, like M2 is normally cheaper, but I think an M4P is even cheaper than an M2. M3, they say, is built the best, so may last the longest. It's my favourite because of the 0.91 magnification and because it's optimised for 50mm lenses, but it doesn't work with flash. Again, I'll put this up at the end of the video and then you can decide for yourself which camera is better for you. So that is a quick summary, well, not so quick as I'd planned, but a summary of the Leica M2 versus the Leica M3. In my next video, I'll try and compare the Leica M6 to the Leica M4P.